Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Long time no see. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Daredevil Born Again season 1, okay, because it's only the beginning. Let's talk about it. So yes, Daredevil is back. Daredevil has returned after 7 years since the end of season 3 over on Netflix. Finally, we got a chance to see what Disney Plus had to offer for this famous Marvel character. And listen, before we even get into the nitty-gritty of this season of television, okay, I want to start off by giving everyone a round of applause. Round of applause for everyone who fought, who campaigned, okay, who worked so hard for this series to return. This is truly one of the most legendary fan campaigns of all time. People really put their blood, sweat and tears into getting Daredevil back, and honestly, what a success story, because it wasn't fair. Like, us Marvel fans were bleeding and broken when we found out that Daredevil would not be continuing over on Netflix. It felt like this incredible series was being punished due to, you know, corporate agendas that had nothing to do with it, and it was honestly heartbreaking, especially because season 3 ended up being one of the best series of not just Daredevil itself, but of any TV show of all time. And so the fans rallied behind this series and this character, this iteration of the character portrayed by Charlie Cox, which is just magnifique. And 7 years later, we finally have a follow-up to the original show. Now, originally, it wasn't even supposed to be a direct sequel to the Netflix series. Disney and Marvel HQ have been fiddling around with this property over the last few years, and it has led to some public humiliation. Like, it has led to several beatings which Marvel have taken, as we have seen various different showrunners, directors and writers and even cast members go in and out of this series as they try to figure out what to do with it. But ultimately, they finally made the right call in returning to the original format and story of the show and giving us all of the things that the fans really loved the show for in the first place. And thank goodness for that, because even though we do see echoes of what would have been throughout this season, we'll talk about that later, ultimately this series really thrives because it stays true to what made people fall in love with this series in the first place, whilst also elevating material and giving us new directions for the story to go in. But I can't wait to delve into the nitty-gritty of season 1 of Born Again. But before we do, as per usual, you may have forgotten because it's been a while, but as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Listen, I'm playing catch up. There are so many shows and movies that I want to review for you guys, and I'm sitting down here today to catch up on a few. So don't worry, there will be new uploads coming up. But without further ado, let's get into Daredevil. So despite the fact that Daredevil Born Again has a whole new name for legal and financial reasons, typical Disney nonsense, we do pick up from the same story that we got in season 3 of the Netflix series, where we saw Daredevil go up against new villain Bullseye, aka Poindexter, like what a crazy ass name, but also the iconic nemesis that he has, which is Kingpin. At the beginning of Born Again, we are reunited with the classic 3, the holy trinity of the Daredevil series, with Karen, Foggy and Matt himself, and they're celebrating, they're having a grand old time. But chaos and madness soon follows, where we get the re-emergence of Bullseye, who ends up killing Foggy in the most heartbreaking scene of all time, actually, of all time, because how can they rip away this character from us when we just got him back? We literally just got him back and he was already snatched away from us in the first major scene of this remake. And with the return of Bullseye comes the return of Daredevil himself, and he ends up fighting off Bullseye in one of his iconic fight sequences. They end up on the roof, and Matt ends up chucking Bullseye like wheel, and I thought he was done. Like I thought, like, okay, like we just killed him, and honestly it was justified. Honestly, I would have written that one off because the man just killed Foggy. He killed Matt's best friend. So I thought that's how they were going to end the Bullseye storyline, but in fact they had other plans for the character. So even though he goes splat on the concrete below the building, he doesn't end up dying, and in fact there's a whole trial and he ends up getting imprisoned. In the meantime, a whole year passes from this tragic, devastating incident of Foggy's death, and whilst Bullseye is going through this whole trial, Matt kind of reinvents himself and changes his life around. He moves into a whole new building and starts building a life that seems like, you know, he's an ordinary kind of person who's working in his own law firm, lives in a whole new apartment that feels more like an actual house as opposed to an abandoned warehouse, which you used to see him in. You know, he's getting coffees with oat milk, like he's a whole new man. And most importantly, he has hung up the horns for good. He has decided that Daredevil is no more. If he is going to fight for justice, he's going to do it in the broad daylight as a lawyer rather than in the dark of night as a vigilante. Now, mirroring this transformation is Matt's arch nemesis, Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin himself, who's back, who's back and badder than ever. Listen, I was worried, okay? I was worried. Check the tapes. I have plenty of reviews back in this. I was worried for a second when I saw previous MCU embedded iterations of the Kingpin, especially the one that appeared in Hawkeye, where he was dressed all bizarre and comics accurate, but bizarre and weird and strange. I was so worried that they were going to make Kingpin one of the most iconic villains of the 21st century, quite frankly, okay? I was worried that they were going to make him corny. I was worried that they were going to lessen the violence and the impact and the power of this character in the way that they did in the Hawkeye series, purely through his costume alone. But listen, the showrunners of Daredevil Born Again were like, no, don't worry. no, girl, don't worry, we've got you. And pretty much in the first scene that we get with Wilson Fisk, he is back in his wardrobe again, looking at his suits, and we see that the wardrobe has gone back to the Netflix version, okay? Not the weird MCU-ification version that we got in Hawkeye. Although, to be fair, that was quickly rectified in Echo as well. Now, like I said, Wilson Fisk's story arc mirrors that of Matt's. His traumatic experience was going to prison. Actually paying the price for his criminal activities. Like, imagine that. And not even the full price, by the way. He actually should have been in prison for life with no parole, but alas, he managed to escape. He's completely changed himself. He's changed his diet. You know, all of his suits are too big for him now because he's lost so much weight, and that really illustrates how much he's changed both on the inside and the outside. And so he and Matt are going through periods of transformation, with Matt sticking to fighting against injustices in the courts in a law-abiding manner, and Wilson Fisk deciding to fight against his definition of injustice, i.e. against vigilantes, by running for mayor. And we got an inkling of this at the end of Echo already, but here we see the actual political run carried out in a really interesting and perhaps a little too relatable and familiar way, with the political campaign being shown through Wilson Fisk's perspective, and the fact that he has to like go into politics mode. He has to appeal to members of the public, people who he wouldn't have even given a second of his time to. He has to pretend that he actually cares about what they have to say and about their issue. But all of that hard work and politicsing ends up being rewarded as he does win in the mayoral election, and then he has to keep it up because now he is the mayor and he's run on this campaign of ending violence and criminal activity caused by vigilantism on the streets of New York. He wants to promote safety and security on these streets, and he wants to tamper down all of these vigilantes wearing masks and running amok in the streets of New York. And obviously there is a great irony in none other than Kingpin himself running on the campaign of ending criminality in the city. He who was the perpetuator of so much criminal activity across the city now wants to claim that he stands for an end to violence and criminal activity and a new era of peace and prosperity for the city. Okay, yeah, right. Now, if it was any other time in real life history, this storyline may have seemed absurd and completely out of the realm of possibility or reality. But because we're living in 2025, because we're living in this here timeline of 2025 of Earth 616, unfortunately, not only does this not seem absurd, but it's actually quite familiar. Like I said, Wilson Fisk is going through his own character journey where he's leaving behind his villain era and turning to his superhero era, trying to rid the streets of New York from the evil vigilantes. But echoes and tendrils of his old self and the underworld that he came from keep calling him back. And one of the things that definitely anchors one foot into that old world is Adam. Adam is the man that his wife Vanessa had an affair with in his absence, and he found out about it and he hasn't let it go, actually. Despite what he's been telling their relationship therapist, he has not let it go, and he's actually keeping Adam in a dungeon and torturing him. Now, another thing that's also been anchoring him to the old world is Vanessa herself, because whilst he was in prison and absent from the business, she had taken over to make sure that they kept the illegal businesses and enterprises running. She became the queenpin in his absence, and so she is frustrated by his change of pace in running for mayor and trying to become legit. So we see that there's a lot of push and pull within Wilson Fisk as he tries to become this epitome of legitimacy, trying to save New York from the evils of vigilantism, all the while being seduced by his old life and all of the criminals and criminal enterprises that he used to run, drawing him back into his old shadow self. It's throughout the series that we see the new and improved versions of both Matt and Wilson Fisk start to crumble and fade away as they lose the fight against the reborn versions of their former shadow selves in this really brilliantly mirrored character arc that they both go through. So those are the broad strokes of the Born Again storyline. There are, of course, these smaller story beats that we get in each of the episodes across the 9 episodes total. Like, for instance, the introduction of Hector Ayala, who is one of the vigilantes roaming the streets of New York, and he goes by the name of White Tiger. He ended up getting defended by Matt after he was accused of killing a police officer in an altercation where he was actually trying to save a victim who actually ended up being undercover and was working for the police. It was a whole thing. At the end of this extremely riveting trial, Hector Ayala was found not guilty, and he ended up leaving prison only to end up being killed by a corrupt, filthy, dirty cop who was inspired by none other than Punisher. We will talk about Punisher in a moment, okay? But there is a whole cult of police officers who have banded together and are inspired by Punisher's antics, not really realizing what Frank Castle is really about and not understanding him as a man, which is again very much something that we see in real life in these modern times of 2025. Unfortunately, despite Matt's efforts to get Hector Ayala out of prison, he ended up in a coffin because because of this horrible, brutal murder. And that was one of the stronger side storylines of this season, because it helps set up a whole bunch of things, but in particular, this movement of corruption within the police force, and the fact that there was this cult that had formed around the Punisher, but also these specific individuals who didn't want to follow due process. They just wanted to be, roaming around free in the streets of New York, using all sorts of weapons and all sorts of force to do whatever they pleased. And they ended up being empowered and encouraged by the new mayor, Wilson Fisk himself, who wanted to use them and use this cult-like behavior to his advantage in his pledge, in his mission to rid the streets of vigilantism. Now, this series gave us an Avengers Infinity War style ending, where at the very end, the bad guy won. The bad guy won. Wilson Fisk got his way. He returned to being the Kingpin, except this time around, he is a legal, powerful entity, and everything that he does is technically by the books, including these Docklands areas that he has a hold and control over. He has forced New York's wealthiest and most powerful to hand over a whole bunch of money so that he can invest in the Docklands area to create a whole new hub for himself and Vanessa. And as Karen discovers in the season finale, all of their criminal enterprises and movements will be completely legal, based off of this very old law from the 1800s that no one has bothered to change. And so he's on the up and up, like he just stays winning. By the end of the show, he has gotten everything that he wanted, and so has Vanessa, because she has gotten her old husband, this shadowy force of a man who is primed to take over the whole of New York by any means necessary. So at the end, whilst we do get the rebirth of our favorite horned vigilante, he has hit rock bottom at this point. He lost his best friend because he was killed by Bullseye on Vanessa's orders, and the streets of New York are being run by this vicious, fascist, anti-vigilante task force that are controlled by Wilson Fisk. Not to mention the commissioner has been killed in the most brutal way imaginable. So it seems like there's no hope. But of course, Matt isn't giving up, and neither is Marvel Studios, because they will be continuing this story in season 2. But in the meantime, we have to sit here in this wretched air of failure as Wilson Fisk basks in his glory. So in terms of my thoughts on the story for Daredevil Born Again, I thought it was, for the most part, pitch perfect. I thought the writing here was so strong, and I'm so glad that they ended up going in the direction that they did, returning home to the version of the character that we got from the beloved Netflix series. Originally, they wanted to go in a whole new direction for money reasons, typical cheap ass Disney, but also to kind of Disneyfy the character and reinvent him for the MCU proper, even though Daredevil has always been in the MCU, but like now he's really in the MCU, showing up in Spider-Man movies and whatnot. And so they wanted to reinvent him and do all kinds of stuff, but I'm so glad that they first of all abandoned the idea of having 18 episodes that would be like half an hour long or whatever. They abandoned the idea of recasting Vanessa, for instance, and getting a new actress to portray Wilson Fisk's wife, and like recasting a whole bunch of people, getting a whole new bunch of characters. I'm so glad they threw all of that nonsense out of the window. It might have taken them ages. It might have led to a whole bunch of delays and rewrites and reshoots, but they finally got it right. And for the most part, the story is so much better for it. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some visible scars from this season. I mean, I saw on social media that as each of the episodes came out, people highlighted which of the episodes were like newer and were a result of the reshoots, and that being the first episode and the latter episodes, like episodes 8 and 9 in particular, were fresh and brand new, whereas the other episodes in the middle kind of utilized a lot of the older material that they had already shot before the pivot in a new direction. And so it was kind of a hodgepodge of both, but ultimately I think it came together really, really well, even though there were episodes that were definitely stronger than others. And I'm just gonna say it, the bank episode. Okay, the St. Patrick's Day bank episode was definitely one of the weaker ones, and I know that some people were defending it, saying, oh, like, we've lost the art of filler episodes, blah 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 blah. Filler episodes work when you have a 22 or 23 episode season. We don't need filler episodes when we only have 9 episodes a season. Like, it doesn't we don't need, like, we're not talking about a season of Friends, okay? We're talking about a season of Daredevil, and we don't even have the 13 episodes that we used to over on Netflix. So like, we can't actually afford any filler episodes. Actually, sorry, like, unpopular opinion, but we can't afford any filler episodes. Whilst it was cute, and whilst I thought it was fun to see Kamala Khan's dad make a little appearance in the Daredevil series, I personally would have scrapped that one. It's definitely the weaker of the whole bunch, and it didn't really add too much. It added a little bit in terms of like the criminals working for Vanessa and how they're disgruntled and everything like that, tied in an okay way, but like, really we could have scrapped that one because it didn't really add too much to the series overall. So yeah, there were definitely some visible scars still left behind after all of the change in direction and movements and reshoots and reboots and whatnot, but considering how complicated it was to even get this thing on screen, to even land this thing on Disney Plus, it is a miracle that it ended up being half as good as it did. And at least it gives me some hope that we still have the same creative team and writers behind the first episode and the last few episodes that were the stronger ones, working on season 2. So hopefully that means that season 2 will be consistently brilliant and will be rid of some of the issues that season 1 suffered from. And speaking of some of the issues that season 1 had, I think a major gap that I felt was within the Bullseye storyline, because when I heard that Bullseye would be returning and they would be continuing on with the season 3 storyline explored in the Netflix series, I thought we'd be getting more of him throughout the show. Well, actually, as I said, I thought either he was going to die in the first episode when he landed like in the concrete when Mac chucked him over the building, either that or we would be getting more of him and his trial and his time in prison throughout the series. But he really did disappear after the first couple of episodes of the show, only to pop up again in the last couple of episodes. And again, I think it is a symptom of the changes in direction and everything that happened with the show. But I do think that the finale did a good job in tying it all back to Bullseye and his involvement in Foggy's murder, because they did reveal that it was Vanessa that had hired him to commit the murder. And so it made sense that as soon as Bullseye ended up escaping from prison again, he came after Vanessa and Kingpin. I was so upset. I was so upset when Matt saved Kingpin. I was so angry. I was like, Matt, what are you doing? And I know he was like, oh, I just like acted on instinct. But I'm like, Matt, no, you didn't. I mean, I know that you're against killing. He's against killing, which is fine. He's a cute little Catholic boy. He's against killing. That makes sense. But that doesn't mean he had to save, Kingpin. But alas, he has the superhero blood running through his veins, so he can't help it. Like, his automatic reaction to danger is to try and save that person, even though that person would absolutely deserve to get straight by Bullseye. Vanessa would have absolutely deserved it. Did you see how she treated Poindexter? She knew that man was hanging on by a thread. She took away his pills. She snatched them away. No, she absolutely would have deserved it. But Matt had to go save the day. And what did he get for it? Absolutely nothing. He got hunted down and almost killed, and he had to be saved by Punisher. Oh, he had to be saved by Punisher for his efforts. Dummy. And speaking of Matt and his shenanigans, let's dive into these characters. First off, of course, honestly, when I say this, I'm so serious. give this man an Oscar. Give this man an Oscar. You know how there are some actors that are so perfectly cast that they become synonymous with the fictional character. Like, you can't imagine anyone else portraying that fictional character anymore because they are just such a perfect fit. Charlie Cox has done such an exceptional job from start to where we're at now in portraying this character that it is truly insane. He is up there with some of the best casting for any superhero character or any character period of all time, because he is Matt Murdock. He is Matt Murdock. Like, please, the fact that he has stood the test of time, the fact that fans backed him up so viciously and so wholeheartedly over the last few years since the cancellation of the show is a testament to how perfectly cast he was in this role. And with this return, he's able to slide back into character effortlessly, like slipping on an old pair of comfy slippers. Like, it suits him and fits him so well. It's custom made. And speaking of Oscars, speaking of Oscars that need to be handed out, we of course need another Oscar for none other than Vincent D'Onofrio, who is the Kingpin. Listen, guys, listen again. Perfect casting. And you get the sense that with both Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, they have such a protective stance with their respective characters. Like, they're protective of them and they want to see them in good projects and they want to do right by them. And that is the difference, guys. Like, you never get the sense that they're phoning it in. You get the sense that every single scene matters to them. They are taking it so damn seriously and we are rewarded for their efforts. Oh, they're just perfect. They're just perfect. Vincent D'Onofrio again slides back into the role of Kingpin effortlessly, and we actually saw more of him since the end of Daredevil than we saw of Daredevil himself, because he of course made an appearance in Hawkeye. That version of him wasn't my favorite, as I said, but that wasn't Vincent D'Onofrio's fault, okay? But then he returned in true form in Echo, which was a much needed improvement, but even still it wasn't quite to the level of what we saw of what we saw here. He is able to play with all different parts of the character when he's campaigning for mayor, when he becomes the mayor and has to put on this persona, this performance of what a mayor should be. But then the cracks start to show as he is seduced by his older shadow self and he returns to the life of crime that he knew and loved, except this time it's all legal and legit because of a crazy legal loophole. And so he's loving it. Like, he is living the best of both worlds and he has his wife by his side. He really emerges victorious by the end of the series, and Vincent D'Onofrio is able to play all different parts of this character, and it is just invigorating to watch. Now, this entire cast is fantastic. I also wanted to shout out Camar de los Reyes, who was the late actor who portrayed White Tiger, and he passed away in real life, but he was absolutely phenomenal on the show in the first few episodes when we were exploring that storyline. He gave as such, depth and pathos to this character in the short time that he had, and it's crazy and horrible to think that he passed away, but he left behind a really brilliant portrayal of the White Tiger that will forever be remembered. And we also got great performances from returning actors like Wilson Bethel, who portrays Benjamin Poindexter, aka Bullseye. Again, wasn't in it as much as I thought he would be, but he was still phenomenal in the scenes that he was in, and we will be getting more of him in season 2, I suspect, so more to come there. Of course, we got the return of Karen and Foggy, who were both brilliant. I mean, Foggy was only there for 4.6 seconds, but Karen is such a babe. She's so phenomenal, and I hope to see more of her in season 2, but she was great. Deborah Ann Wool was absolutely phenomenal as this character, especially in that season finale. Especially in that season finale where we saw some sparks, okay? We saw some fire between Karen and none other than Frank Castle. Yes, he's back. Yes, he's back, guys. The Punisher, John Bernthal, honestly, the talent, man. You either have it or you don't. The talent that this guy exudes is so impressive. He's another one that's just perfectly cast, like just another example of exceptional Marvel Netflix casting. Some of the casting from that era was just impeccable, and he's another example of that. And at the end, where we got to see him not only confront but beat the crap out of those corrupt police officers that were prancing around the street with his skull emblem on their chest and tattooed all over their bodies, he got to pounce on them. Okay, he beat the hell out of them, and then he gave them a good verbal licking too. Where he told them, he's like, I wouldn't even piss on you if you were on fire. Like, he made it clear that he does not agree with their dogma and their ideology. He thinks they're ridiculous because they don't actually understand what he's been through and what drove him to become the Punisher in the first place. They are just idolizing his violence and brutality and the fact that he doesn't adhere to any laws or rules, which is something that the Kingpin has empowered them to follow. So having the Punisher return for the season finale was just impeccable. I loved the banter that he had with Daredevil. I loved the little moment that he got with Karen, okay, the little coffee. Ooh. And I just love the fact that he groomed himself. As soon as Karen gave him the call, he was like, I need your help. He was like, say less. He put the phone down. And then he went to the barbers. He went to the barber. He was like, I need to get cleaned up. Like, I need to fix this up because Karen's coming. Okay, Karen's coming over. So I need to be presentable. I love all of that. John Bernthal is so perfect for this role. And again, I hope to see more of him in season 2. And we did get a mid-credit scene where Punisher is shown to have escaped from the prison that he was held in. So hopefully we will see more of him in season 2, and he will make up part of Daredevil's much needed army to take down the Kingpin. Now, speaking of this army, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it because I have seen a million jokes made about how in the season finale, instead of getting the Avengers, instead of getting even Spider-Man or Echo or anyone really to step up and try and defeat the evils of Kingpin, all we had was Matt, who was bruised and broken and had a hole in his chest and like couldn't even stand up properly, and he was fighting all by himself. And everyone has been asking, really and truly, where was Spider-Man? Is Spider-Man a fraud? Do we need to put Spider-Man on fraud watch? And it's true, logic and reason would tell us that Spider-Man would need to be there. He would need to be there to help defend the city. But unfortunately, we're not dealing with logic, we're dealing with Sony. We're dealing with Sony's contractual obligations, and it's not looking likely that Spider-Man will make an appearance in a Daredevil show unless they acquiesce and allow him to show up. And so this is my big ask. Sony, if you're watching, okay, come here, take a seat. I need you guys to sign the papers. I need you guys to sign the paper. I mean, if we're thinking of Spider-Man like a child of divorce, he has to spend like 1 week with dad and the next week with mom. I'm gonna need Sony to allow Spider-Man to have the summer over at mom's house, Marvel, over at mom's house, so that we can get Spider-Man in the next season of Daredevil. Please, guys, please, because it makes no sense. It makes no sense for Spider-Man to just not be there, unless you're gonna say he's in an alternate reality, but he's not. Like, he's in 616 with everyone else, so like, please make it work, otherwise it's ridiculous. Now, I do think that there is a bit of a fine line where you kind of have to be careful if you are going to incorporate these other characters and make them a part of the Daredevil story, especially the kind of streets level heroes like Spider-Man or Moon Knight. Oh my god, imagine getting a scene with Moon Knight, Daredevil, and Punisher. Like, that would be incredible. But if you are going to incorporate them and bring back the Defenders, come on guys, you can do this, then you need to strike a balance between having those fun cameos but also still allowing Matt to shine in his own show. I don't think that would be much of an issue because Charlie Cox is so perfect as Daredevil that it would be tough to overshadow him, to be honest. But there are some pretty strong contenders out there. I mean, if we got a Kate Bishop, okay, if we got an Oscar Isaac as Moon Knight, okay, they would definitely be competing for the spotlight, but it would just be a huge benefit to us as audience members because we would have a feast of a show. But we're not there yet. Time will tell what will happen in the second season of the show, and thankfully we won't have to wait too long because apparently it's due to come out in 2026. Oh my god, I can't time, guys, I'm going to be giving Daredevil Born Again Season 1 an 8.5 out of 10. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Daredevil Born Again, I can't believe it's back. It's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of the series down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch your videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.